All right, well, I don't know if you can tell, but the recap is done. All the electrolytics have been stuffed. So we've got Sprague and F&T in the various positions. Everything looks nice and tidy. So next up, we'll go ahead and do all of the Jupiter cap swaps. Got quite a bit, so let's dive in. And you might be saying, Tanner, why aren't you testing the Astrons first before ripping them out? Well, I've been burned by that once before. So I had some that seemed like they tested fine on my side, and then a little bit later in the owner's hands, and that happened to be an amp that was shipped to me, they had problems, and I had to pay for return shipping, and I ended up not making any money, actually probably losing some money on that project, definitely if you consider my hours put in. So no longer. When I see Astrons, I do replace them, and just is what it is. Best for everybody involved long term anyways. So owner decided to go forward in this case with Jupiter. Very nice caps. These are kind of the top of the line, and should be sweet to see these in here. Got a few different values in this. Not always your typical 0.047, 0.02, 0.1. So we can see we got a 0.25, we got a 0.02, 0.03, a couple 0.01s, 0.02, 0.01. Well, I was real confused here because I was like, I looked up the layout of the amplifier and ordered the parts actually before I even had the amp in hand. And I had all of the right parts, I thought, but I see this 0.25 right here, and I ordered another 0.1. So what's going on here? So I looked up the 5F11 layout, and yeah, look at that, 0.1 right there, 0.25. But we already noticed this amp had some irregularities, right? So it showed right here, instead of a 10K, it's got a 1.5K, this dropper right here. So just a bit odd. And I've seen little things like that before, but to have two fairly large differences tells me there's maybe something else going on here. So I looked it up, and the 5E11 circuit shows instead of a 10K, it's a 6800 or 6.8K. So this is still quite a bit smaller than that. So that doesn't really help us. But then we look here, 0.25, 0.25. So that's interesting. So this seems to be, it might be a kind of a hybrid transition era, between maybe it's, a 5E11A or something, right? So it's not quite a 5E11, or not quite a 5F11. It's something kind of totally unique. Maybe there's a lot like this. Maybe there's just one or two like this. I don't know, but really interesting. So now comes the question what the owner wants to do. Does he want to get a 0.25? This would be, I'm assuming this is the base cap. Let's see where it's connected. So that's going there. Yeah, so it's part of the tone stack. So, going 0.1 to more than double that to 0.25 is a, not insignificant difference. So, yeah, fascinating. Okay, let's see if this one was right. 0.005. 0.05. Okay, at least the red Astron was correct. So, all right, let's do a little bit more research, talk to the owner, and go from there. Upon further review, also notice the plate resistor right here is a 220K, whereas on the 5F11, it is 100K. So this appears to be mostly a 5E11 with perhaps a little difference here pointing to the 5F11. There may be other differences. I just got to look at it a bit closer. But because that plate resistor, I'm going to keep that cap here. I actually think the cap is part of, so looking at it a little bit closer, I think it's part of the trem circuit, tracing it over. I think we're going to keep the 0.25 there and just keep it that 5E11. So I got to order one. Yeah, we'll go ahead and do that. I'll confirm with the owner tomorrow morning, but I think that's probably the right move to do. So, okay, cool. Well, we can at least get started with the rest of them. So let's get to it. All right, so there's all of the Astrons replaced, except for the lone 0.25. I'll finish that up once the new one comes in. But overall, I think it came out pretty good. And hopefully the owner will be happy with the way that looks. So and yeah, next steps, we'll just wait for that new part to come in. I'll do some basic maintenance stuff. We'll clean the tube sockets, clean the pots. Oh, I've got to replace this Astron as well. I'll probably knock that out real quick off camera. And then yeah, we'll just kind of hold and wait for more stuff to come in, and then do the 3-prong install and all that fun stuff. So you guys will come back when we got more parts. Spoke to the owner. It's the next day, and we agreed to keep it the 5E11 circuit that, or at least the majority of it seems to be. So I've got a new Jupiter on order to replace the 0.25 coupling cap here. The 220 K resistor, plate resistor right here. That's part of the 5E11 circuit difference. Will be staying. Also, there's another resistor difference. I believe it was this cathode bias resistor, 3.3K, orange, red. Yeah, 3.3K. I don't remember what the 5F11 circuit was, but I think that was slightly different. Otherwise, they're all the same, except for this resistor over here, but I already mentioned 10K in a 5F11, 6.8K in a 5E11. This amp happens to have 1.5K, so I have no idea what the bias is doing over here. We'll have to figure that out when we actually turn it on. Okay, so with all of that, oh, I also got this little guy installed off camera. I really like the look of the red Astron replacements from Jupiter. They look spot on from the original. Let me grab it. There's the original there. I mean, it looks pretty much identical, apart from being, I guess, slightly more faded looking on the original. They did an excellent job on that. There you go, you can see that a little bit better. I don't really understand why the yellow Astron replacements look the way they do. They should be this mustard yellow, and the color should be green. I mean, you'd think they're trying to replicate this right here, but they got this like very faded yellow look. I don't know why. It's a minor thing, but if you're paying to have a vintage clone of something, I don't know. It seems like they should at least get the color right. But regardless, they're going to sound good. The install looks good. I'm happy with all of that. So next steps, we'll go ahead and just do some cleaning off camera. You guys don't need to see that. And then we'll work on the 3-prong and go from there. So yeah, looking over if there's anything else I'm missing here. Oh, interesting. Yeah, okay. Interesting. So I just noticed, because this says 3 input jacks. I've never really had it. I've never had an amp on the workbench with 3 input jacks before. So because this was part of the student line from Fender, more akin to the, it wasn't the professional series yet, like you would get with the bigger amps. There's no grid reference to ground 1 meg resistor. I forget the name of them on the inputs. From the grid, from the grid to the inputs, you'd have a 1 meg. You can see you got the 68Ks, 3 of them. That's kind of interesting. Huh. All right, well, that's how Leoto decided to do it back then on this model. But yeah, we do have grid leak or grid stop resistors over here, 1.5Ks. So I guess the only other thing to note is these carbon comps, these droppers, they measure fine. It's usually best to replace those with more solid, sturdy, like Vichy power metal films. Usually what I go with. Same thing with the resistors and the bias supply. So we'll see if the owner wants to do that or not, or keep the original carbon comps if they test fine. So, okay, a lot of talking. Let's get to work. I don't know when this will go out, but I recently watched a video on Psionic Audio's channel. I just saw that one move. He was taking a look at a Headstrong, I believe it was, amplifier, and all of the hardware was loose. All of the, I don't remember, the jacks, the pots, whatever else. And yeah, it's one thing that I definitely need to be better about, is taking the time to do this, take the knobs off and tighten everything, because this one had several, they weren't very loose, but loose enough to, to be slightly concerning. And so you just want to take the time to make sure all of that's tight and solid, because, something this old, it's bound to get loose. Maybe less so on a new production amplifier, but certainly on the old stuff. All right, catching you guys up to speed on what I've done. So we've got the 3-prong. You can see I use one of these more modern strain release, which work really well for these type of amplifiers where the hole is very big. So using something like this is a lot more difficult and not, frankly, as secure. So that's done, and then you can see how I have it set up. So the white goes to the power transformer primary, which is this black wire right here, and so it's just tucked under and they're heat shrunk together and soldered underneath there. And then the hot goes to the fuse tip, and then the fuse sleeve, I used one of the original wires we removed from the selenium rectifier connection to go from there over to the power switch, which has the other end of the transformer primary on it. So that's the proper way to do it. And then for the ground connection, it's the longest by far, and I'm just going to loop it over akin to this, and then we'll give it a fresh connection somewhere over here, either on this side or this side. In fact, let me just see how I want to do that right now. I want it to be out of the way and easy for me to do without potentially burning anything. Make my life easy. So I think we'll do this. Something like that. Nice and out of the way. That might be hard to reach. Either way, I will chime in when I've got it ready, but then I'll show you guys the process of how to get a good chassis ground connection. All right, not sure if you can see that. Yeah, you can see it. We'll have it right there, so it's still out of the way. Step one is I'm just going to score the chassis. So we'll just kind of take a little flathead, and I'm just going to create a little line. And now I'm just going to do little hash marks around it. Basically what I want to do is I'm just creating a texture for the solder to grip onto, just to ensure we have a really good connection to chassis. Cool. You want to make sure you can feel that too with your fingernail. Then we'll clean it with a little bit of isopropyl. And then I like to use this gauge, 1.5 mil, much thicker solder. You can see kind of a more typical for side by side. This has got a lot of flux in it, so you don't need to add additional flux. It'll do just fine. And then we'll use gravity on our side here, so I'll kind of have to prop the chassis up. So then we can just go ahead and solder directly there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a bead going, and then make sure that's really nice and solid, and then we'll add the wire to it after we have the bead. But let's get the big iron going. So the big iron I use, so here's the iron I use for chassis grounds. I actually have a much bigger iron that I also own that's a vintage, kind of older one, and it's just not as good, to be honest. And it's much more unwieldy, much harder to use. So this is the Weller SP80, and I love this thing. So I have a link in the description below to all of the tools I use, this included, that you guys can purchase off of Amazon. And I do get a little bit of commission from that. So if you want to support the channel and get the tool you need, as a little tip of the hat for the recommendation, that's how you do it. So let this warm up for a while, and then we'll get going. All right, it should be warm enough now for us to do it. So we'll go ahead and tin the iron a bit. While I'm at it, I'm also just going to hit the old original one just to make sure it's really solid. So I'm just going to grab the needle nose like this, and then put the wire down. Just make sure the solder's flowing. Like so. It's kind of cool. So I just removed the flux, and you can actually see from the factory where they did exactly what I just showed you guys. So I get in the light just right. There you can see. So you can see how they scored the chassis as well when they did their ground connection. Cool. So both of those look really good, nice and shiny. If it'll focus. And yeah, we can call that done. Tuck it down out of the way. So there's our 3-prong all done. Nice and low key. Doesn't scream, you know, doesn't stand out like crazy in a vintage amp like this when it's done like that. Just takes a little bit of extra care. We're now at the stage where we can turn it on. So I added solder there and just hooked up a 1/4" cable to the RCA plug so that we can connect it to a speaker cabinet. And I've got the trim pot set to its maximum. So it's 25K plus 33K, giving us about 59K. So it's a bit colder than the stock value, and we'll see what that gets us, and we'll have plenty of range to go the other direction to warm it up if need be. The big question mark is the 1.5K, as I mentioned a few times. So we'll go ahead and fire it up, make sure we got negative voltage where we need to without tubes, and yeah, just slowly work our way up to actually strumming the thing. So making good progress though. First startup, I've got it hooked up to the current limiter and the variac. So let's go ahead and see what's what. We do have negative voltage, which is great. Let's see if the schematic lists what is expected. Obviously, we're under voltage and have the current limiter, so it's not going to be correct. But I'm just curious. It says negative 31 volts. That's what the 5F11 schematic says. So that's interesting. Let's just make sure. All right, as I do this, things change. And it does, though not very much. Okay. Let's go ahead and turn it off now. We'll go ahead and throw in some power tubes and see if we've got any problems. Look at how cockeyed this tube is. What the heck? I've never opened this brand new set of JJs, but wow, this thing is totally cockeyed. Anyways, okay. That is crazy looking. All right, let's try this again. Got 100 volts now. This thing's not wanting to wake up. That's 110 from the wall. So I can flick it off. Turn it back on if this will kick in. Do we have any plate voltage? What's going on here? No plate voltage. Oh. I think we got a bad rectifier. I just touched the rectifier and it... All right, let's swap the rectifier. Got another vintage 5Y3 right here. Bell & Howell branded. It does feel loose. Can you see that? Definitely loose fitting glass. You can hear that. So, okay. Let's see if this one's any better. Okay, instantly got plate voltage. That fixed that problem. Let's see what we're getting for bias. Okay, popping. We are getting output. For some reason hitting the volume is causing some popping noises. Okay, so we got something wrong with tapping the chassis. Seems like we might have jack problems here. There's nothing wrong on the current limiter. Bring it up to 120 volts. Current limiter is still looking good, so I think we can go ahead and hook it up directly to the wall and get the actual bias voltage. With our bias pot at its warmest setting, maximum or minimum value from the bias pot, so basically it's just running 33K resistor, and that's giving us 390 7, 398, somewhere in that range, about 17, and that gives us 60% plate dissipation or thereabouts, which is kind of roughly where we want to be. We'll have to play with it because the trem is based off the, I believe the trem is based off of, yeah, it's bias trem in this amp. So basically 33K is kind of our target point. So we want the midpoint of the resistor to be about 33K. So if we got a 25K trim pot, you know, we probably want to have more of like a, I don't know, a 20K resistor or something like that, 22K, 15K, somewhere in that range. Yeah, those are the only values I have. So 15K or 22K to give us a little bit more range with the pot to have usable bias. Be kind of interesting. I'm a bit surprised, to be honest, how little difference that has. So, but we do have output, which is good. And it was this jack specifically that I need to kind of bend in the shorting contact. But the bias is at a point to where we could actually test it. So let's grab a guitar real quick. And I got a 12-inch speaker just down, speaker cabinet down by my leg here that we can test it with. All right, that sounds awesome. Okay. I think, I don't know, are the inputs different? Jacks are a little tired. So you can hear the difference, massive difference between those jacks. And the middle one. Then once again, back to the hot jack. Try tremolo now. Oh yeah. That sounds sick. Killer. Okay, well, pretty stoked. I'm going to take a quick clip to send to the owner so he can hear it. I mean, it definitely smells like it's running kind of hot, but might just be old wires warming up and all that fun stuff. I mean, the bias is fine. I mean, it's warm right now. Let's see what it's put at. It's a bit hotter now. It's 396 or so. 20. So 66%. I mean, still not nowhere near the danger zone. Gone ahead and swapped in the original RCAs that came with the amplifier. We'll see what those bias at. Holy moly, massive difference between them. And wow, okay. Let's cool this down. This just goes to show the wild range. Okay, so we were at like, what, 396 play voltage with the JJs, and these are at 420. So let's go ahead and cool those way down. Let's see what they're running at. Play current, so one of them, D, this one is way hotter than this one. So let's see, at the coldest bias setting we can do right now, 432, let's call it. This one is running at 50%. And then this one is running at about 22%. So they're a mile off from each other. So the hot tube, to get this one to bias right, we only need to warm it up a little bit. And this bias pot really is not giving me very much range. One for plate voltage, so maxed out, we're still only doing 63%. So really the range we're only getting is kind of small. We're getting from, what was it, 50% or so to 63% for the hottest tube. And then the other one is sitting currently at, let's be generous and call it 9 milliamps, 421, 32%. So one is at 63%, one is at 32%. So those are, yeah, a big enough difference that you can't do anything about that. So quick little update on the Vibrolux. Got in the new old stock RCA 5Y3, which is perfect. Basically exactly what the amp had in it, but this one, it's got the wiggles to it. This one is obviously rock solid and clean, so that'll be great. And then we have two new 6v6s also on the way. Those are new old stock black plates, really nice set. The owner splurged on that. I'm really stoked for him. This thing is going to sound incredible. So we're just waiting for that to come in. And then once that comes in, we can dial in the bias to make sure it's perfect. So it's just so variable going from brand new JJs, as I think you guys saw, to the old RCAs that were in this that were wildly mismatched. So we just want to kind of wait for the right tubes to come in, make sure we're dialing in for those, and then have enough range to kind of set it up for any other tubes down the line. So that's where we're at. And then also you'll see the order came in for the Jupiter, the 0.22, which is going to be replacing the 0.25 Astron right there, big old fat cap. And then that'll be the last one of the caps that need to be swapped. So from there, it's really just waiting on tubes, bias, and then the speakers off for a recone now. So hopefully that won't take too long, and we'll get this thing up and running for the owner soon. I know he's really itching to hear it through the original cabinet and speaker, as am I, though I will say it sounds amazing through my 112 with the Celestion 100. That speaker is incredible. I've been using it with a ton of amps. That thing just sounds so good. So anyways, enough of that. Let's go ahead and install the big old Jupiter. All right, man, we got some beautiful tubes here. Check this out. Circa 1943, we've got a extremely matched set of Jan RCA 6v6 GTs. Just incredibly cool. This is like, man, this is so sick. I wish they weren't so expensive because I'd love to dabble with this stuff in my own personal amps. But regardless, KCAnewoldstocktubes.com, and you can see the Delta there. These are like primo matched pair. So very neat. And then I think you guys already saw the new RCA 5Y3 as well. So what we want to do now that we have the actual tubes that we're going to be putting in this thing is figure out what we want that resistor to be as we dial in the adjustable bias range. So you can see I've got the pot set up as a variable resistor, not a voltage divider. And right now we're at its maximum resistance. So it's a 25K pot measuring 26.5K. So we'll kind of have that as the baseline. And then we had a 33K in there before. So I've got that dialed in on the Decade box just kind of as our initial reference point. So we'll go ahead and turn it on, just make sure we have negative bias in the correct location here. So just over to DC. So we'll just check at the grid there. And then once we confirm it's safe, we'll throw in the power tubes to kind of dial in what we want to do for the adjustable bias. So go ahead and turn it on. Turn down the Variax. We don't have any power tubes in it, so voltage is going to be a bit high. There we go. So we can see we've got negative voltage, which is great. Confirm the other side. Beautiful. All right, that's what we want to see. Kind of curious opening the box what these are going to look like. What does a 1940s tube box for the Army look like? It's going to be very fragile. Wow, okay. Oh, look at that. It's super cool. What a unique little design there. A little dusty. The box has its own patent applied for. That's really cool. Man, that's just so neat. I love that stuff. Okay, let's go ahead and put these in. A little dusty, but that's all right. We should probably put in the bias probes first. Let's do that. So we're sitting at 62% with that current setup. But if we want to go ahead and raise this, let's bring this up to say 56K. You can see this actually has very little effect on the bias. I don't know if I said this before, but this 1.5K, I feel like this is why it's a dropping resistor for the bias feed. And the schematic calls for 10K. I think I've seen that they usually might have a 6.8K there for a 5F10. So I think this being so small is meaning that the adjustment here is just not able to do a whole lot. Regardless, so it's not a bad thing. It's just odd to me. I'm not used to that. It's, you know, actually a good thing to have a range that's like basically you can't mess it up. So anybody could adjust it, and you really can't red plate or anything. It doesn't allow you to go too far either direction. So it's not a bad thing, but just kind of curious and interesting. So we'll go 33K there. I've got a new old stock Allen Bradley, one of my few remaining. Sometimes I'll take off the fourth band, but I'm not going to do that in this. I think it's fine. So we'll go ahead and get that installed. Just I love the thick leads on this. So much more sturdy than the modern carbon comp resistor. In fact, let me grab one just to show comparison. This is a modern that you get. Just looks so cheap in comparison. The color looks weird. It just looks like really low quality. You can see just spinning it how the edges are really rough. The color looks terrible. The bands are really small. The leads are super short. The leads are like, I don't know, half as thick. So yeah, I really dislike modern carbon comp resistors. They're just not good at all. But I still have some of these, so this amp deserves it. We'll get it in there. Pretty happy with how this came out. Nice and subtle, you know, not bright in your face. That it's got adjustable bias. I'll show it from the side angle as well. You can see I got it kind of lifted up so it's level with the trim pot. But then from the top view, it looks kind of normal. Cool. Really, really stoked actually with how this came out. So from here, I think we can go ahead and just check the bias one last time with the probe, as well as run a signal through it, check it on the oscilloscope, make sure everything's looking good, check the trem, make sure the trem looks okay. And then from there, we really just got to wait on the speaker to come in and we can do the demo. But I'm itching to hear this thing through its cabinet. So excited. Got the speaker back from the Recone and it looks excellent. I don't remember the name of who did it. I'll put them up on screen because they did a good job for a good price. So I haven't played it yet, but it looks good and I imagine it's going to sound great. So let's go ahead and put this in the cabinet. I like to do that just kind of with the cabinet facing down like this. It's a bit dark, I know, so I'm not going to show you guys, but there you go. There's without, and we'll put it in.